Hello, welcome back to another Power Channel. I'm Jacob J. Booksquare, and today we are talking about people we meet on vacation. We're going to talk both about the book and also the movie and a novel versus video, which is essentially where we do a novel versus the adaptation. So we're going to put them head to head and figure out which one is a better version for you to watch. I'll try to keep the spoilers minimum. However, I will have to say once we get to the actual comparison part of this review, I might need to talk a little spoiler. Just little spoilers. There's some character changes that were made that I wouldn't deep dive into. That being said, I of course want to do a quick little plug of my own work. So I wrote 3 books. They are currently out in this world. If you want to pick them up today, you totally can. The first one being Gunshot Residue, the second one being P49, and the third one being Mr. St. James. All 3 books are a part of a trilogy, a romantic suspense trilogy where the main characters are already married when the story begins. It is a somewhat enemies to lovers romance. It's a very complicated situation that they have found themselves in by the end, or by the beginning, the end of the first book, and you're trying to navigate the minefield of it and all the other characters. I am obsessed with these books, and I'm so excited to be able to talk to you about them in full very soon. But that being said, that's enough about me. Let's go ahead and jump into what you clicked on this video for, which is people we meet on vacation. Let's quickly start with the novel, and then we'll jump into and do a slight little movie review as well and talk about the movie. I'm going to try to separate them as much as possible. That way we can leave the third part, the third section, the comparison, the announcement on who's the winner. I will also not reveal the ratings for both the movie and or the book until the very, very end. That way you have an understanding. Alright, that being said, let's start with People We Meet on Vacation, the book written by Emily Henry. This is a reread for me. I had already previously read this and I already had some thoughts and opinions. The book follows Poppy and Alex as they have been going on vacations since they were in college. Now they are pretty outside of college. They're working on their own. They have their own lives, but they have decided that every year for 7 days of the week, they'll get rid of whatever they're doing, whoever they're with, doesn't matter, and they'll go take a trip together because that's what they end up loving to do. 2 trips ago, Poppy and Alex got into a little bit of a tussle and they decided to close off their friendships. Well, now Poppy has decided that she would like to go on a vacation with Alex. This is because Poppy herself is feeling in a rut. She doesn't understand what's going on in her life. She doesn't have any hopes and dreams. She is calling it millennial something or other. I can't remember what it is, but it's referenced a few times, which is why I mentioned it here. And so we are following Poppy as she experiences this. And so she decides she's going to text Alex, and they end up texting, and they end up deciding he's like, oh, I'm already going to this place. If if you're going there, my brother's getting married. And she's like, oh my god, your brother's getting married, that's so cool, I'd love to go. Do you think you'd invite me to the wedding? And he's like, oh yeah, totally, you're like one of his favorite people. And so they end up going a few days early to spend a few days together and do like their normal sightseeing vacationing to catch up before the actual wedding and wedding events that end up happening, is the point of this book, while also flashing back to the previous vacations and getting understanding of their relationship, because this is a second chance friends to lovers romance. That's all you need to know. That's all it wrote. Let's talk a little bit about the characters, as we're going to talk about them again in the movie format, and I'm just trying to cover all the bases in those. So I can talk about both equally. So with Poppy, once again, her main aspiration in life is to figure out what drives her. It's what she wants the most. Alex's main aspiration in life is interesting about the person he's with. He wants to find the perfect person he loves, who loves him, that can understand what he needs as a partner and can equally understand what they need as a partner. And that's what we're dealing with here. They are a little bit of opposites attract, but it's very slight opposite attract in my opinion. It's not even like a dramatic opposite attracts. Once again, like I do say, we do flash back to several vacations prior to this as well, to deep diving into how they became friends, first trip that they took, the second and third trips that they took, what it meant when they brought their partners together, how other people felt about their partners, how they felt about their partners, how their parents felt about them in a relationship, being friends. Can 2 platonic friends ever just be platonic friends? Does there always have to be more? There's this interesting quote throughout the entire book, is that their relationship abides on this 5% rule, that there's always a 5% chance on these vacations that they could end up falling in love, and they always just take the risk. So that's also really interesting, and it's like fully developed. By the end of this, though, by the end of these trips and stuff, something ends up happening that changes their relationship, and those are big moments as well. Lots of big moments. Lots of big moments. For a book that is dealing with some deeper topics, it's definitely not the darkest and heaviest Emily Henry. So there's a more lighterness to it, that it bodes it to a comedy more than a dramedy. That's the book. Let's go ahead and pull up a movie cover let's talk about the movie. The movie People on Vacation is actually kind of similar. The setup is different though. Poppy and Alex are still, the same thing still happens. They go on all these vacations as, they become friends, and it's a friends to lovers, second chance romance. The whole thing's still very much the same. However, the main timeline is different from the previous main timeline from the book. So this movie follows Poppy as she gets invited from the brother himself to the wedding that Alex is going to attend. She also decides to make it a work trip, which is not something that ends up happening in the book. We'll talk about that when we get more into comparisons. I'm trying to just keep it as surface level as possible for this review. He ends up going directly there to the place that they're going to for this wedding, and instead of it being a longer trip with Alex, it's only a few days, and it's the days of the wedding. And Alex he's aware that she's going because she says, "Oh, I'm going to this wedding," but it's not like a huge thing. That's the big things. Something that they did change about Poppy that is so important. I don't know how I feel about it. Poppy in the book, Poppy in this movie is extremely extroverted. She's very witty. She has a lot of personality, a lot of quirks, one would say. Alex is a lot more subtle. There's a lot more face acting going on with Tom's life as he's portraying this character. There's a lot of stuff that's kept away from the audience, which I think could be very controversial. I'm not gonna lie to you, just because of the fact I think there's something to say about Tom Blythe's feeling almost distant, but the moments where he comes out, where he allows Alex to like kind of shine a little bit, is breathtaking. It truly does take you're just like, oh my god, I can't believe that character had it in him based on what we've seen and presented so far. I really liked it. I really liked a lot of those elements. Not everything fully worked, but I liked what was given and what was there. So for the trips and stuff, I actually really think that they embodied almost all of the previous trips up until the final one so well. And it was so well done and so beautifully well done. There's sequences where it really does feel like Poppy and Alex, and they do come to life on screen. Modern, like new day Poppy and Alex, I don't know if the movie fully did everything that I wanted to. I can't tell if it's a director problem, if it's a writing problem, if it's an acting problem. There's just something about it doesn't feel like there's enough difference between the performances and how it's shot. It also was a little bit lackluster in certain ways. As a movie objective standpoint, we've both really enjoyed the soundtrack. We felt like there were some really good hits on it. There's also some pretty not good ones. Follow Do was a really interesting choice, but I'm pretty sure it's from the book. I enjoyed the soundtrack quite a bit. I also really enjoyed the score. I feel like the score had a lot of smaller undertones to it, which I think ended up really working in a lot of ways. So I enjoyed the score. Cinematography for the vacations aspects and stuff, New Orleans, gorgeous. However, once again, for the up-to-date stuff, not so much. So that's the movie. All right, we're gonna jump into the comparison. I'm gonna put both covers on the screen right now so you have an understanding. I'm also gonna tell you this much. Spoilers ahead. These are character-driven romance novels. You can obviously tell who the end couple is. That's not really a spoiler. However, who they are, how they get there, all those things, one could classify as a spoiler for the type of book this is. And so that's not something you want, and you just want to go into the movie blind and or the book blind. You totally can. If you don't like reading and you're only here for a movie review, the movie's it's a fine movie. I think you can get some stuff to take away from it. However, if you're a purist like me, there is an obvious answer here, and because we are about to jump in spoilers, I'm actually going to move it up to right now. I prefer the book over the movie in this case, and we'll talk about why in the comparisons. Just want to put that out there. So anybody who wants to click off, because there are spoilers coming. Alright, that being said, let's go ahead and compare People With Me on Vacation from the book to movie. I have a few very big takeaways here. A few very crucial takeaways. I hated every single fucking change that they made to main timeline version of the book. Every single change I did not like. There was not a single change that I did. Now, when we're talking about some of the other tinier changes to the previous timeline, I think they all kind of worked. Poppy, like let's talk previous, and then we'll jump into the later timeline stuff. Like their first trip that they go together, where they get lost in the woods together, and they go into like this hippie culture and the whole 9 yards. Where the Lucas Gage gets involved in the movie, and Poppy ends up almost sleeping with him. One, this is crucial because like Poppy herself, I don't know, the way she handles herself in the movie is so vastly different how she handles herself in the book. But also like he kicks her out in the book. I can understand why maybe this didn't translate well into a film. So I wasn't mad with all the changes they made for this. I think in ways it was funny, but also like one of the changes that they did make, in particular from this scene, we'll talk about Alex in the scene in a second, was the fact that they don't come back into play. Daisy as a character comes back in a pretty major, well, not major, it's a good callback though. It makes that section of the book worth it because you're like, oh, there's a payoff to it outside of just building this relationship up. Also, I could just be I just miss, like when I reread the book, I could have just missed it or something. I never remember her being able to take the statue home. Yeah, in the movie, she takes it home and it's even in the flash forward. Shocking. I was like, why are you, what is that doing here? Why is this a thing? It is a thing, I guess. And I understand, like, it's the moment, it's the big moment. And in a lot of ways, I do think this is a part of the reason why Poppy starts to have feelings for Alex. However, Alex, I don't think is fully there yet because of Sarah. And we'll talk about Sarah. Sarah was so vastly different of a character in both mediums. Kind of crazy. And I didn't like it. Sarah's changes I didn't like either. I think it all made a lot of sense for what Emily Henry was trying to say with the book, which we'll get into. Okay. I'm getting mad. I'm trying to back up. Back to Alex and the storyline. I liked everything they did with Alex in the camping trip previously, you know, the summer that they went on for that trip. I like the fact that he's naked and he comes riding up and he has to take her overalls. I think it's cute. Once again, I don't miss any of those changes. I think just adding a little bit more of some of that stuff to the present day timeline, I think just could have went over really well. I also had no problems with New Orleans. I liked everything about it except for Poppy herself, but I don't want to talk about Poppy directly. We'll talk about her as a character in a minute. I mean, there's aspects of Poppy that are fully here. Do not get me wrong. I kind of wrote the character. However, she's so miswritten that it is frustrating. I couldn't imagine being Emily Henry and knowing that your character was so misunderstood. I mean, she's done a lot of interviews and she's never really once mentioned it. She's mentioned some other stuff that she felt like she didn't fully agree with, some changes that they made. I would have been upset. I would have been, like, genuinely, I would have been upset. I would have been like, this is not the character that I wrote. This is not the character that people fell in love with. Yet I've learned there are a lot of Poppy haters out there. So maybe a lot of people do think she's this character that is presented in this movie. I don't think so. Let's talk about Tuscany. Tuscany in this movie is what replaces Croatia in the book. However, in Croatia, even Emily Henry says that she's pretty sure they have sex and or partially have sex and they realize it's not for them. Poppy probably freaks out, pretty much true to Poppy's nature, and then they never talk again. And so putting it here and having this be the big thing is a bigger sucker punch to the viewer. It, in my opinion, hurts the relationship of Poppy and Alex to the detriment of them getting together in the future because they do have a slight breakup. Okay, we'll talk about it because it's horrible in the movie. I liked it much better in the book. About her lying. Just horrible, don't get me wrong. However, her motives were better, and what Alex says was also better. I mean, they use a similar line in the movie, however, it's not felt as heavy. Jump into Sarah, the Sarah in the room. Sarah is someone who is not Alex doesn't meet. Alex known Sarah since childhood, which was a change. That's not something that happens in the book. They meet after Alex has graduated and he is going, they're in the same school or they're working in the same class system and stuff. He's going to be a teacher. In the movie, he's not even a teacher yet, which is shocking. He's going to become a teacher. He wants to be a professor, which is something they talk about in the epilogue, which he does talk about wanting to be a professor. That's not something that's not in the book. Him being a teacher for such a long time is such a big part of his character. And the fact that it's not, like, it's only kind of addressed at the very end of the movie was kind of crazy to me, in my opinion. Maybe I'm too nitpicky. I don't know. Call me out. I don't care. Sarah as a character is someone who is very much adjacent. It's very much the opposite of Poppy. She knows exactly what she wants. She has everything she wants. And she's very not carefree. Okay? Sarah in the movie is very prim, very proper, very much exactly what I would picture Sarah as. Not the actress. That's not her fault. It's what they presented her as. Even the comments that she made and her relationship with Poppy and the little moments and stuff. For a big thing here, a big difference here. She is still with Trey in the sequence as well in the book. For Poppy believes she's pregnant, ends up getting 3 tests, figures out that she's negative and cries all night in Alex's arms and doesn't know what to do. And they have this whole conversation and it's not really exactly like it is in the movie. And I feel like it hits harder in the book. He does not propose. Like, in a way, it's almost as a fuck you to Poppy. And I kind of see where they were coming from once again with the movie standpoint, how they set it up. It felt such horror. Like, this is the moment in the book for me that Alex and Poppy truly work. Where I was like, this is exactly what it works, because Alex is going to have this unrequited feeling and he's never going to make anybody happy. It's just what it's going to be. It's Poppy forever. And he knows that. I think Poppy kind of knows that too, but Poppy is still at a place in her life where she doesn't want to settle. She doesn't understand how to settle. She doesn't think she can settle, which is interesting because it's not about her being too eccentric, people not liking her. It has something to do with the loneliness of it all. But in the book, she has like several siblings that are like by themselves. Even the dogs are classified as being a pair, and she is left alone. She doesn't find her second half until she finds Alex, taking away all these elements of this character and just flushing them away to make her eccentric, to make her the crazy girl, you know, the one who does obnoxiously things, is rude, is all these things that she ends up being in the movie at the cost of her character to make her funny really hurt. I was like, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I thought I was gonna get. Poppy is a character who is rooted in sadness, who is rooted in loneliness, who believes that no one can fill the void in her heart. A part of that is the eccentricness that she grew up in. I wouldn't say Poppy herself is very eccentric. She's very loving and caring towards her parents and her family and the craziness that is her life that's even reflected in her relationships. And how, I mean, there's a person they take home that she takes home from New York that tells her as they're leaving the airport, or maybe even, I think it's still at her parents' house, who say, I can understand why you ran. I totally get it. It's your parents' fault. And it's like, that's not the case. That's not what it is. She loves her parents, and she didn't run because of them. She ran because she felt trapped, and she didn't feel like she could find herself and be free and find something that doesn't make her lonely anymore. And so she wanted to travel, and she wanted to see all these things to fill that void with her, which made her a runner, which made her not have commitment and do all these things, which is what Alex is looking for. Alex is looking for the one who doesn't want to run, which is why Sarah is made and why Sarah is a perfect foil character to Poppy. So taking all these things and changing them so dramatically in the movie, in my opinion, ruins the relationship. You ruin all the stakes and all the tension. Like when they're building up and they almost kiss in outside of Tuscany themselves, it doesn't hit. And then Alex going and proposing? Girl, nah. Also, my Alex would never. I'm just gonna be honest. He would never do that to Poppy. I truly believe it. That was by far, I think, one of the things that hurt the most when we're talking about the before section. I haven't gotten to the present day stuff, which is the thing that pisses me off the most. It's like, I mean, we talked a lot about it. So like, Poppy as a character present day is just so vastly different. One, I hated the fact that they didn't take away from R&R. A big part of this is that she wants to go back to the roots, and so the fact that R&R tells her no, and she ends up, oh my god. Also, another clear sign that Poppy is not the Poppy that we know and love and adore is the fact that she ends up taking the trip. Which, I mean, if you're not a reader of the book, you don't understand that these other people want this trip. And Poppy actively says, no, I'm gonna think of my own idea. That's somebody else's idea. I'm not going to accept going to, like, Spritz or whatever the fucking place is, right? And the fact that in the beginning of the movie, she's like, oh no, I'm actively going there. And then she goes and she says, oh, no, can I go to this other place because of XYZ reasons? Her boss turns that shit down, says, no, it's gonna be a horrible article. I don't want to hear anything about it. I don't want to hear about the wedding. I don't want to hear about anything. No. And so she goes and she does it on her own dime, and she does all these things. So I was alone about that. I was also upset, one before section as well, that her getting sick and him coming to her rescue was not played out longer. I mean, there's a lot, it's a very montagey sequence, and so it worked so well for a movie, and the fact that they didn't really montage that shit up was disappointing. And it shows a lot of their relationship, and so that was also another thing. Because in my opinion, the movie itself doesn't set up the relationship strong enough. So when they actually do get together in the end, they just feel like two people who shouldn't be together. Whereas in the book, sorry, they're both there. I'm about to hold up. In the book, by the end of the book, you truly do believe that Alex and Poppy are at a place in their life that it finally works. That these are two people who met 8 years ago, were dealt a shit hand at love, and who were dealt a shit hand at life that they were just not ready yet. And then 8 years later, they both ended up being single, and they both ended up being ready. Makes perfect sense. A lot of the present day stuff outside of the actual wedding stuff, I thought the wedding stuff was cute. It was very short, very quick, but it's fine. Him saying the line, because like in the book, like I said, R&R doesn't sign off on it, and so Alex truly does believe that this is just another summer, that she was just trying to get him back, and Poppy's really bad about articulating how she feels. And so it does come off that way. And so him saying, I'm not just another summer to you or something, it didn't hit as hard in the movie as it does in the book. In the book, it feels like a true gut punch. And she goes and goes to therapy and does all this shit to make herself better for herself. Because she tells, she knows directly that she cannot get better for the relationship until she gets better for herself. There's something really commendable about that, and the fact that it's just fucking glossed over. Where's the fucking senior sexy? I understand Emily Henry is not Spice of the Wall, okay? We're not talking like 50 Shades of Grey here. We're not talking like spicy spice, right? However, Emily Henry is Emily Henry, like the perfect level for a rom-com spice. So the fact that we got plain Blaine, and the fact that they showed so much nudity with the opening, or with, you know, with the skinny dipping stuff, and then this was just so bland, it was crazy. Like, once again, we were watching it, and I knew that it was bland. They had come out and they had talked about it already in the rating, PG-13, which I was slightly annoyed about. He was like, damn, I was like, PG-13, PG-13. I was like, I know. I was really shocked by it. We were both kind of really shocked by it. Those are my thoughts and feelings on People with Me on Vacation. Like I've already said it before, I final ratings is the book. I gave a 5-star this time around. It was a 4.5 when I first initially read it. This time around, I ended up really loving it, and the movie, and maybe even love it even more, so that's kind of crazy. It's worth my hatred. So I absolutely adored People with Me on Vacation. I highly recommend the book. And there's still a lot of things for you to discover. There's a lot of things we couldn't talk about because it's such a in-depth romance movie. I gave it 3.5. I still think it's pretty equally that way, even though it made me really mad. That being said, what are your guys' thoughts and opinions? Which one did you like more? Did you read both, or did you read and watch both? Did you like the movie better? What are your thoughts on Poppy's changes, Sarah's changes, relationship changes, the whole 9 yards? I didn't really talk about present day chapters, but also like I was so aggravated almost the entire time I was watching present day stuff that like I just physically can't talk about it. It annoys me so greatly the amount of changes that they made with present day. Like, Alex is supposed to stay with her. It's a big point of contention, and it builds such amazing tension that when they were fucking on that rooftop, it makes so much sense. And they don't fuck indoors. They fuck on the rooftop and get caught. Sorry. Because the fucking AC doesn't work, and the guy shows up, and there's like some of this stuff I understand, because like that's a lot of characters, a lot of people to pay for, there's a lot of lines to pay for. Like, from a budget standpoint, I get that. Make it into a TV show then. I digress. That makes sense. Thank you for watching.